Hello and welcome back to this episode of the Engage A podcast. I'm Josh with my co-host Mike. Today we are very excited to be starting our NFL previews with the week 1 preview. We're going to go through every game in specifics and give a pick for each game. We'll get into that a little bit later, but first we are going to start with some college football headlines after week 1 of college football last week. Mike, do you want to get us started with some of those?
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've been able to talk live football. I'm very excited. Some headlines from the college football week, real quickly. Colorado, North Dakota State. I think they played Thursday night. Colorado squeaks by. Travis Hunter looked phenomenal. He was great. Cam Rising is back at Utah for year 7. I just wanted to put that out there.
Let's
Good for
go.
him. Teratoa McMillan and Noah Fafita at Arizona were a phenomenal duo. We've known Noah Fafita was going to be great. We saw how good he was as a freshman last season, and he has a great start here to his sophomore season. Maybe a sneaky Heisman candidate. But Teratoa McMillan, 10 catches for 304 yards, 4 touchdowns. He was phenomenal. Florida State, not so phenomenal. They are now 0-2, very bad after all that offseason where they made fun of the committee for not putting them in.
Mm-hmm.
They looked terrible. DJU is not looking very good at all. Seems like Oregon State, I don't know what happened last year, but they were solid and he was solid last season. But at Florida State, that has not been the case.
Pac-12 defenses were that much worse than the ACC defenses. We'll see if that catches up to Caleb Williams. Big 12 to Pac-12 that's some competition defensively there.
Yeah. The fans for Florida State have been hilarious on Twitter going into spaces. They had a fan who said if they lost this game, he would record himself eating his own shit and post it to Twitter.
Dog shit out of a red Solo Cup is what
it was dog shit out of a red Solo Cup.
Yeah.
He has since, I think, deleted every single social media he owns.
Yeah.
Hilarious. But to the big games this week, we'll start with Notre Dame versus Texas A&M. In Texas A&M, Kyle Field was going crazy, and Notre Dame went in there and they got the job done. Riley Leonard, they didn't really have to pass the ball too great on offense. He only had 158 yards passing. They had 198 yards on the ground, but their defense was phenomenal. Texas A&M couldn't really do too much, especially passing the football. The Notre Dame defense was very good, only 100 passing yards for them and 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. And on the ground, really not too much either. Kind of a defensive battle. Notre Dame was their defense was too much for Texas A&M to handle.
Yeah, it was a good week in college football. I don't know if did you mention Clemson, Georgia? I don't know if you mentioned
I still have that coming up.
Oh, well, yeah, I'll segue us into that, I guess. Clemson, Georgia was a blowout for Georgia. Clemson had some question marks going into the game. Specifically their offensive line, specifically Cade Klubnik. Is he going to be able to bounce back? I shouldn't say bounce back. He had an okay year last year, but is he going to be able to break through? And is Clemson going to be able to be a good team? If you have a bad O-line, you never want to play against Georgia. This was a recipe for absolute disaster for Clemson, and it ended up being just that. Another game, Oregon played against Idaho. And they struggled a lot in this game. They were only up like 14 at half. I believe at one point in the second half, it was a 1-touchdown game against Idaho at home for Oregon. A tough start for Dylan Gabriel and them. I'm sure they're going to end up figuring it out, but that was tough for them. You mentioned the Notre Dame Texas A&M game. That game was great. That game was a low-scoring game for a while. I believe that one was like 6-6 at half. That game was phenomenal, though. Texas A&M still struggling to be able to live up to their hype year in and year out, whether it's Jimbo Fisher or not. But more than anything, that is just a gutsy win from Notre Dame, a team that has high aspirations this year. Even though they cannot get into the top 4 for the college football playoff, they're only going to be able to get the 5 seed at the best. Their goal is going to be to get that 5 seed. That 5 seed is probably going to be the Notre Dame spot, and it's a great way to start your season off with a win in Kyle Field, which is, of course, a really, really tough place to play. Other notable games here. Did you mention Miami and Florida yet? I don't.
I did not know.
Yeah, Miami and Florida. I didn't catch most of this game. I took a nap right before it started and woke up and it was already a blowout. So, but yeah, Miami looked phenomenal. Cam Ward looked phenomenal from what I got to see in the second half. And it's always tough to go into the swamp and get a win, especially in a rivalry game. Miami goes into the season ranked. Florida is not. Florida's still supposed to be a solid team with Mertz, but Miami goes in there and absolutely dominates, and they're going to be looking good going forward here. USC LSU on Sunday night was another great game to start off week one. I guess to finish off week one, but regardless, USC looked great defensively, which is something that we were all worried about with these Pac-12 teams going into the Big Ten. Like I said, Pac-12 defenses have not been great historically, definitely not recently. And USC goes in there, a team that couldn't get a stop to save their lives for Caleb Williams last year in the Pac-12. They go and they play against an SEC team in LSU, and they were phenomenal defensively. They only give up 20 points. This game was back and forth. USC went up early, then LSU came back and held the lead for much of the second half. And then late in the fourth quarter, back-to-back scores from USC. They go and they steal a win from LSU in Vegas, and that was just a huge win for them. And then you mentioned it with Florida State. Ouch, man. Starting 0-2, you go to Ireland, you lose to a Georgia Tech team, and then you go at home against Boston College and lay a complete egg. I forget the Boston College quarterback's name, but he was phenomenal. I forget his name, but he was so good. I'm trying to find it here. Thomas Castellanos. He was really dynamic. Well, how many rushing yards did he end up having? He only finished with 73 rushing yards, but he also didn't throw a single pick, 3 total touchdowns. He was great for them. And then, of course, their defense really stepped it up. But the biggest thing here is Florida State now not only starts 0-2 overall, they start 0-2 in conference play. And that is not a good look for them early on.
No, not at all. But back to some of the games that you covered. Georgia, Clemson. Clemson just didn't really stand a chance in this game. In the second half, especially, Georgia completely took over. Wasn't close at all. They looked like man versus boys. Carson Beck, he did phenomenal. They did good on the run, and defensively, the Georgia defense absolutely dominated Clemson. Wasn't too much of a battle. The Miami Florida game, and a rough start for the two Florida schools in Florida State and Florida, especially Florida State. But Miami dominated. Cam Ward looked great. He was he looked very nonchalant out there, to say the least, but it was electric. His arm looked very good. He could run the ball very well. Damian Martinez as well in the run game for Miami was good. Miami can just make sure they need the ball to end games. They could be battling for a playoff spot, possibly. It'll be interesting to see. And then USC versus LSU, very good game. I expected LSU to win this game going into it. I saw you expected LSU to win as well, but USC kind of they took it over late. LSU another choke. Miller Moss was phenomenal with USC. He had 378 yards and a touchdown. They weren't great in the run game, but it would, like you had touched on, like you said, their defense really did phenomenal. Slowed down this LSU team and essentially won them the game with their offense taking over late. But what a start for the Big Ten in this new kind of Big Ten versus SEC kind of just top two conferences. They get the first head-to-head win there.
Yep. And speaking of the conferences, we could talk a little bit about the new AP poll that just came out today following the last Monday game yesterday of Florida State. Florida State, I do not see them on here.
They better not.
We're going to see them on here for a long time. They are not on the list, of course. Big risers, USC, we just spoke about them. They're up to 13 now after being 23 going into that LSU game. Georgia Tech finds themselves in the rankings now after a 2-0 start. And then, of course, they have that game over Florida State. Clemson falls to number 25. They just make it in, and they just edge out Texas A&M for that last spot after both teams losing big games. Like I said with Notre Dame, that 5 spot's going to be their sweet spot this year. They are sitting at 5 now, moving up 2 spots in the rankings. Oregon, after playing Idaho close, sometimes, or not sometimes, you in college football, in college sports in general, you have to beat the bad teams by a lot. Oregon was not able to do that. They dropped 4 spots, although they get a win. And what other big Miami up to 12 now too, after beating Florida so bad at home. And Alabama, post Nick Saban, finds themselves in the top 4 again. We have 3 of the top 4 are SEC teams, and 4 of the top 6 are SEC teams.
Yeah, Michigan falls 1 spot as well. They played Fresno State pretty close. Offensively, they didn't look phenomenal. Their defense is still very good, but new quarterbacks. We didn't really know who was going to start. Everyone thought it was going to be Orgy, and it wasn't. Looking at this top 25, this is pretty much what I expected. Ohio State and Georgia, I think they're going to go back and forth for that top spot. Georgia will have it, but Ohio State looked very good in their opening game. I think they played Akron. They were phenomenal offensively and defensively, just absolutely dominated. So it's early. Yeah, this is going to move a lot. It'll just be interesting to see how the SEC and Big Ten shape up in the top 10. Right now, the SEC has it, but a lot of Big Ten teams there at the back half of the top 10.
And a big SEC Big Ten matchup next week with Texas at Michigan. So
Yeah,
that
and I
should
think-
be a great game.
I think Texas is going to win that one.
I definitely think Texas is going to win that game too. I could see them winning it in dominant fashion. But are we ready to move on now to the Week 1 NFL preview?
Yeah.
All
I
right.
want it.
What was that?
It's been how many months since we've last been able to do this? About
A lot, not 9, 8, about 8 months, or yeah, 7 months, 7
7
months,
months.
7 months, 7 months.
7 months.
Tough math,
That's
even
tough.
though it's not. It's almost probably to the day of the Super Bowl, but
Yeah, the Super Bowl recap was 6 months ago.
all right.
February 17th.
No, not 6 months ago. 6 months ago would be March 3rd.
February 17th.
7 months. About, I guess, in the middle, 6.5, whatever.
Yeah, it says 6 months ago.
February 17th. The Super Bowl was that deep into February. Damn.
Yeah.
Damn. For some reason, I just always think February like 3rd, 4th, 5th, the Super Bowl, but 17th. Damn, I don't even remember that. That's crazy. But here we are, Week 1, Thursday night football in 2 days from the day we're recording this, 1 day from the day that you are watching this, if you're watching it when it comes out. Ravens at Chiefs, Thursday night football to open the season. Another game in Arrowhead to open the season. For these two teams, two questionable O-lines, 4 teams that are really good otherwise. I trust the Chiefs pass rush more than I trust the Ravens pass rush going into the season. So I think this will end up being more of an advantage for the Chiefs being able to get to Lamar early and often. Whether you are able to sack him is a different question, but be able to get to him and make him uncomfortable, absolutely. Home field advantage for the Chiefs should be next level. We saw last year that wasn't the case. The Lions were able to go in there and get a win, but of course, Arrowhead is always going to be a tough place to play. The Ravens secondary, I think, can end up being good overall in the season, but it's going to be very early. Of course, the first game of the year, they have a ton of young pieces that are going to need to get time to get comfortable in this defense. And I think that's going to work against the Ravens early on in the season. Well, I think it could end up being a strength later on. The Ravens' run defense, I think, is going to be very mid this year as a whole. I think the Chiefs are going to be able to go up and down the field running all over this team. I think they're really going to use Pacheco a ton this year, and I think they're going to rely on him to set up that pass game as they were able to do in spurts last year. I think they're going to be able to take that over a prolonged period of time and really work that, and I think the Ravens are a team you can do that against. Long term, I think if you look in January, I think this is a much closer matchup. But Week 1, I think the Chiefs cruise in Week 1. I got Chiefs -3 as my pick. And I will take this time to explain because I forgot to explain that. Unlike last year, we picked every game just outright winner. We found that to be, I don't want to say easy, but all 3 of us had great records because we're so many of these. If you have a Chiefs Giants game in Week 5, we're all going to pick the Chiefs. It's going to be an easy Chiefs win, and you could chalk those up. And when you look at this week, I think there's a ton of games that we just kind of know what's going to happen, at least who's going to win. So we are going to take the FanDuel Sportsbook, and instead of picking an outright winner for every game, we're going to pick a matchup on the spread. So for this one, we're choosing between Ravens +3 and Chiefs -3. For this one, I'm going to go with Chiefs -3 as my first pick. This will be on a graphic too, so it'll be easier.
Yes. Ravens, Chiefs, last year's AFC Championship game. Ravens went into that game expecting to win. They had the better roster, had the team that was one, if not the best team in the NFL during the regular season. They had one of the best run games in the NFL. I think they led in rushing yards. They went into that championship game and ran the ball with running backs 6 times in the entire game. They threw the ball with Lamar Jackson 37 times, had him as like a statue in the pocket. I do not think that will be the case at all. They brought in Derrick Henry. We talked about that in our preview. I think he's going to demand carries, and I think he's going to have a big-ish game against the Chiefs here. He averages 112 yards versus Kansas City, which is more than any other team in the NFL for him. And I think he's going to continue that in this week, and he's going to have a big game. I've bet against the Chiefs a lot in the past, especially last year. I bet against them a lot. I think the Ravens win this game outright, and I'm going to go with Ravens -3. I think this game's going to be close. I think the Chiefs are going to struggle a little bit, maybe in just week 1 or 2. I still believe the Chiefs are going to win and obviously compete for the Super Bowl, but I think the Ravens are going to come out frustrated with how last season ended, and Lamar's going to have a big game. Derrick Henry's going to have a big game, and I think this offense is kind of going to push the Chiefs back a little bit. They did lose L'Jarius Sneed in the secondary. I got the Ravens -3 in this one.
+3, you mean?
+3, yes, +3.
+3. Okay, cool. So this is the exact reason, I guess, why we're doing this.
Well, I was going to take Ravens money line regardless.
okay.
I think the Ravens win this game outright.
Oh wow. Okay. Let's move on here then to Packers Eagles Friday night football from Brazil. Packers at Eagles technically. It always sucks for the team that has to take this as a home game, but
Especially, I mean, London, I guess, is hard for how far away you are, but Brazil.
yeah, that is tough to have to lose a home game there. But the Eagles do. I'm sure they signed up for it in some way. But the Eagles, in my opinion, are a much more complete team on paper. And at the end of the day, we're going into this from from the preseason into week 1. We're looking at these teams on paper for the most part, and what we saw last year, of course. The Packers, I think, are going to have a bad run defense. They've had that for the better part of this last decade. The Eagles, I think, are going to be able to dominate on the ground. We know how good of a running team they are. Of course, they lost Jason Kelce. Their O-line is not nearly as good as it's been in years past. They're still going to run the hell out of the ball, and now they have Saquon Barkley to do that with. The Packers O-line, we went back and forth on this. I think it is a weakness for this team. Whether I think it's bad is a different question, but as far as looking at this team from afar, I think it is one of the weaker parts of their team. But luckily for them, the Eagles pass rush, I also don't think is too special. They do have some pieces up there that are going to be able to get to Jordan Love, but I don't think they have a crazy enough pass rush where Jordan Love's going to be in trouble the entire game. I don't think that ends up being a big problem for the Packers. The Eagles have a young secondary, and I think Love and the Packers are going to be able to pass all over this young secondary. I'm a big fan of the over in this game in general. That's not what we're picking here, but I do love the over in this game. I think the Packers are going to have a field day passing over this young secondary. Similar to the Ravens, I think this Eagles secondary can come to fruition and be good towards the end of the year, but it's early, and I don't think we see that early from them. I think it's going to be a back and forth offensive game between these two teams, but I think the Eagles are going to be able to set the tone, dominate time possession because their strength is going to be in running the ball, whereas Jordan Love and the Packers are going to be trying to throw on this Eagles team. I think that benefits the Eagles at home in Brazil, and give me the Eagles -2.5.
Yeah, this one is very close to me. I agree with you. I think this is going to be a shootout. I'm also a fan of the over. We talked about the Eagles secondary, how bad it was last season. They went and completely revamped it. And at the end of the season, we saw Jordan Love absolutely torching secondaries. I think the Packers are going to move the ball very well. Not as good as they might have last year. And offensively, I just love the weapons the Eagles have against this Packers secondary. I think it could be a big game for A.J. Brown, but they also have Devontae Smith as well. And Jahan Dotson now as well for a solid little wide receiver trio. And then obviously Saquon Barkley in the run game could be big. I think the Eagles are going to run the ball very well. For the Packers, I think Jordan Love's going to have a big game, but they also have a very good running back that they can rely on in Josh Jacobs. We saw last season the run game with Aaron Jones was very good, but he was banged up for most of the season. Hopefully for them, Josh Jacobs can stay healthy all season and really help them have a consistent run game. I just think the Eagles overall as a roster, I mean, in week 1, we don't have too much to work on except for what we saw in the offseason and last year and what we think of the rosters. And especially in a neutral site game week 1, I think the Eagles have the better roster. So I'm going to go with the Eagles. What was it? -2.5 as well.
2.5, yep.
And I think it's going to be a close game, but I think they win by at least a field goal in this one.
Yep, I agree. Moving on here to Steelers at Falcons. The Falcons are a much more complete team overall going into this game. The biggest hole for the Falcons, if I had to pick a cert between pass defense, run defense, pass offense, rush offense, I would go with pass defense. But I assume the Steelers are going to struggle to pass the ball early on in the year. We talked about their receiving core being so thin with Van Jefferson and who is their Calvin Austin is the wide receiver 2 and 3, and then they have Romeo Wilson from Michigan to round out everybody after George Pickens. And then they, of course, don't know what they're doing at quarterback, Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. They're going with Russell Wilson to start the season. I am not expecting this to be a team that can pass the ball a ton. or is going to pass a ton. Like we said in the AFC North preview last week, I think this team is going to benefit greatly from being able to run the ball. The Falcons are a tough team to run the ball against, though. I think it's going to be tough for them to move the Steelers to move the ball in general against this team. I don't think they match up well. They're going to match up well against teams that have great secondaries, but you can run the ball against them. I think they match up well against a team like the Packers, who we just spoke about, but they're not playing that team this week. The Steelers defense overall, I think, is going to have a great season, but this Falcons offense is going to be truly electric, I think, and that is going to cancel itself out in this game. You're going to see some success from Kirk Cousins and the Falcons. You're going to see some success from the Steelers pass game, but at the end of the day, I think this is going to turn into like a defensive slugfest. I trust the Falcons more offensively in this game than I trust the Steelers, and for that reason, at home, I'm going to go with the Falcons at -3.5.
While writing my notes, I had the random thought last year when we were talking about this Falcons team and Desmond Ridder and how Desmond Ridder was just like ridiculously good at just winning at home. And this game is in Atlanta. Obviously, they don't have Desmond Ridder anymore. It's Kirk Cousins. But these Kirk Cousins versus Russell Wilson, two quarterbacks drafted in 2012. First time a quarterback with at least two quarterbacks with at least 12 years of experience are playing each other in a debut game for a new team. So two vets, debut game. Kirk Cousins coming off the torn Achilles. Russell Wilson coming off just struggling in recent years. And looking at the two quarterbacks, I know he's coming off the injury, but I do trust Kirk Cousins more than I trust Russell Wilson right now at this point. And when I look at the rosters, I like the Falcons defense a little bit better than the Steelers defense. And offensively, they have obviously a way better offensive line and better receiving core as well with London. I hope to see a little bit more Kyle Pitts in this game as well. Hopefully he has a good start to his season. I think it's going to be about a 10-point game. I'm hoping that the Falcons can come out and really prove that they are a team to be reckoned with this season. So I'm going to go with the Falcons at -3.5 as well.
And for the Steelers, guard Isaac Samalu is not going to be playing in this game. That was announced a couple hours ago from Mike Tomlin. So another big issue that could present itself for the Steelers. If they can't run the ball this game, they're going to be in some trouble.
Yeah. And one more thing for a plus maybe for the Steelers is that in the first game of the season, Arthur Smith has the chance for a revenge game. So
that's true. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. So
he's going to be...
He won those games at home too with Desmond Ridder. He won them.
Yeah. Who's the Steelers' backup tight end? I need to know. I need to bet his over. It's Darrell Washington. Or whatever.
Yes, from Georgia, the big guy.
Darnell Washington.
Yes.
Or maybe Connor Hayward. Maybe he's...
Yeah, or Connor Hayward. Cam Hayward got signed to an extension today. That also happened.
Yeah, good for him. He's older.
But... And we didn't talk about Ayuk, but we're going to get to that later, so we'll talk about
and Pearsall.
Yes, at the very, very end. But moving on here to our next game, still in the 12 o'clock Central, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Cardinals at Bills. The Cardinals, I think, are going to be a decent team, but this is a tough atmosphere for them to go into week 1 against the Bills. The run defense was horrible for Arizona last year, and the rush offense, I think, is going to be a strength of this Bills team in this upcoming season. I think they're going to have to rely on the run, although they do have Josh Allen. The Bills secondary is bare, and I think they're going to give up a lot of yards this year. Luckily for them, Arizona does not have the most receiving threats in the league. I think we see a great debut game from Marvin Harrison, though, against this Bills secondary. Regardless, though, they do not have the most targets to tear apart this Bills secondary, as a lot of other teams are going to be able to do this year. Josh Allen, I just think, is a good enough playmaker to do enough damage on his own. And I think he's going to have at least some success regardless of his weapons, regardless if his receivers are able to get open. He's going to be able to do damage. That's just what he does. The Cardinals, I think their key to success in this game is to find a run game early and often be in a good spot. They need to be able to be in a spot where they can run the ball. If they're forced to have to pass the ball a ton, that's going to just benefit the Bills secondary, who's already going to struggle. If they're able to predict pass, that's going to help them a lot against a Cardinals team who I said does not have a ton of weapons. I think the Bills are going to win this game outright. I'm back and forth on the 6.5. It's, I believe, it's the second biggest spread this week. I believe that's out of Bengals Pats. I'm back and forth on it. I could see the Cardinals competing in this game, but I'm going to reluctantly go with the Bills -6.5.
I'm very excited for this game. I've been very excited to watch the Cardinals all offseason with Kyler and Marvin Harrison Jr. And it'll be interesting to see the Bills with their first season without Stephon Diggs. The reshaped wide receiver room, obviously they have Keon Coleman, their early second-round draft pick, Khalil Shakir, who's finally getting his chance to be maybe the wide receiver one for them. And then I love Curtis Samuel in the slot. But I think the guy who's going to take over is James Cook, especially in this game. I think Cook and Allen are going to be a great duo on the ground. You'd said that the Cardinals have a on the lower side rush defense. I think those two are going to take over, and that's why I like the Bills in this game. Cardinals, they have two new cornerbacks starting, Sean Murphy-Bunty and rookie Max Melton. I don't think they're not going to have the toughest matchup they'll have all season. This Bills wide receiver room is still young, and it'll be interesting how they go, but I'm very excited to just see that. Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously, they're going against the Bills, who don't really have an alpha cornerback, but they just kind of have a trio of guys who can get the job done with Christian Benford and them. New safeties as well. The Bills, they didn't have a bad start, but they had a rough start to the season last year. This game is in Buffalo. I think they know they're going to have to come out hot. I think they have too much firepower with Josh Allen and James Cook. And on the defensive side of the ball, they got a couple guys at Oliver who can get it done. They have the better roster. I think they should be able to get this done. It is a big spread. I think the Cardinals keep this game close, but I think the Bills might pull away late. I'm going to also kind of reluctantly go with Bills -6.5.
Yes, it is a big spread. It's tough with these big spreads early on. But moving on here to Titans at Bears. This is the Caleb Williams debut game, his debut in Soldier Field in a real game, not in a preseason game, as he did play there in the preseason. But Titans, I think, are just going to have zero luck in the run game versus the Bears. Bears have one of the best run defenses in the league. They finished the year so strong on defense, but especially in the run game. The Titans are really going to struggle to run the ball in this game, which is going to put a lot of pressure on Will Levis. Although the Bears secondary is questionable for me, I do not think it's the deepest unit. I think you have a lot of unproven guys there. If they're able to stop the run, we saw last year they were able to stop the run, force teams to pass, and then when you know the pass is coming, it's not nearly as hard to stop. They were able to do that last year. I think they're definitely going to be able to do that against this Titans team when they have to pass the ball. The Titans defense isn't strong up front. They're not strong on the back end. I think this is a great matchup for Caleb Williams going into this year. He's going to have a ton of targets. We know they're able to run the ball. As long as the Titans pass rush isn't able to get a ton of pressure, and I do not think that's a strength of this team. I don't think we're going to see that a ton from them. That I think Caleb Williams is going to be in a great spot to have a really good game one. The Bears offense, just outside of that O-line, is set up for success. I don't know if that's going to always work for them against the great teams, but I think they get a great cupcake matchup here in week one against the Titans. I think the Bears win by about a touchdown, and at that 4.5 line, I'm going to take the Bears -4.5.
Yeah, since the 2003 season, there has been 15 quarterbacks taken first overall in the NFL draft. And in those 15 quarterbacks debut game, they've gone 0-14-1. So it's been a rough start, but for most, I think, if not all 15 of those quarterbacks, they got drafted to the worst team in the NFL because usually the worst team in the NFL has the first overall pick. In this situation, Caleb Williams goes to a team that did not make the playoffs, but was close to making the playoffs. He's going to inherit two receivers. He's the first QB ever drafted in the top 5 to inherit two receivers who are both coming off of 1,200-plus yard receiving seasons in Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. And then they also have the first round 9th overall pick of Rome Odunze. They bring in Swift and Kmet. This offense, like you said, is completely set up for success. And their last 8 games, they went 5-3. Their defense started to figure it out. They gave up only 17 points per game in that stretch, which was the best in the NFL. They were great against the run the entire season. So I don't see this Titans offensive line and running back duo of Tyjae Spears and who's their other running back? Tony Pollard.
Johnson. For the Titans. I thought you meant.
Yeah, I do not think they will be able to run the ball at all. So it's going to be a lot on Will Levis, who has some good weapons. He's got Calvin Ridley who's come in and DeAndre Hopkins, but I don't think he's going to be able to really compete against this defense at all. I think the Bears should win this game actually pretty easily, and so I'm taking Bears -4.5.
Yeah, I got offered Tony Pollard in Dynasty yesterday from you know who was sending trades probably. They offered me Tony Pollard for some picks yesterday, and I was like, absolutely not. Don't know if I could be lower on anybody else. Maybe Eckler. But
I tried to make a move for the first overall pick in that draft, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, you hate to see it.
I love that draft. I love my draft there, though.
Me too. Moving on here to Pats at Bengals. Like I said, this is the biggest spread of the week at 9.5 points. Pats are one of the worst teams in football entering this season. As you know, I talked about it on the last episode here. I am not super high on Cincinnati as a team, but this is such an easy matchup. It's very hard for me to go against them. Pats defense is just bad in all aspects, and we know what the Bengals offense can be. Despite if you have any question marks about their O line or their run game, this is a game where everything should work for them. I think the best games for Cincinnati and their offense this year are going to be when they're able to run the ball. This is a game where I definitely expect them to be able to run the ball against New England. Bengals' biggest weakness defensively is on the back end in their secondary, but we know what the Patriots are. We know they're not going to be able to pass it super well. It's Brissett, right? I'm pretty sure it's Brissett.
Yes, Brissett starting.
He definitely looked strong at some points with Washington last year, where they had to take him out because they were trying to tank. But regardless, I do not think the Pats are going to pass it super well this year. They're going to need to run the ball well all year this year, and I think the Patriots could do that. But I think the Bengals are going to be a good run defense team this year, and I think they're going to be in a good spot to stop the only chance the Pats have of competing in some of these games against the better teams. So again, this is going to be reluctant because I'm scared with these big spreads early in the year, but I'm gonna take the Bengals minus 9.5. I think they're going to blow the doors off of the Pats in this game, honestly.
I'm with you with that completely. But for the Bengals, Jamar Chase is questionable. He still hasn't really decided if he's going to play, not or yet.
Thought it was a hold in.
Yeah, it was a hold. No, it was a hold in, and then the next day, oh my gosh,
It was a
Zach
hold
Taylor?
out and now a hold in again, right?
Yeah, but I thought he was still questionable, but because they said the next day said he's sorry, he prematurely said that Chase would be ready to go.
Oh, I didn't see him say that. Really?
Yeah, he said he was premature on that
Oh,
statement.
yeah, that
So
doesn't look good.
So Jamar Chase is questionable. T. Higgins is ready to go. I don't think it really matters if Jamar Chase plays or not. I think this Bengals team is just that much better. They're debuting their new run game with Zach Moss, who appears to be the number one, and Chase Brown, the number two, and Chase Brown will also do kick returns. So I bet it's about 70-30 on the snaps. They also have Mike Gesicki, a former Patriot at tight end. Their O-line is not elite, but the Patriots D-line will not really have much of a threat to get to the quarterback at all. No Christian Barmore anymore. He is out for a long time. I think he has blood clots, so praying for him. Their secondary is solid. They have all five DBs returning from last season, but I just see this Bengals offense being able to score, and I don't see this Patriots offense being able to score. I'm excited to see Christian Gonzalez back. I hope Jamar Chase plays. It'd be very interesting to see how he would match up with either Chase or Higgins, and if he can continue to do what he did at the start of last season. Bengals, they have great linebackers. I think Brissett will struggle a little bit. The secondary's okay. I think they're gonna get better as the season goes on. And then Hubbard and Hendrickson have been a very good pass rushing duo in the last couple seasons. I think Trey Anderson had 17 and a half sacks last season, so he was very good. The new safeties duo of Von Bell and Geno Stone, I think, will have a big game here. I don't see this game being close at all. I easily am going to go with Bengals 9.5. Joe Burrow's back. I think he's going to want to make a statement in game one. Game's in Cincinnati, so we don't have to worry about the Lighthouse playing any factors.
Yeah, that's good. That is always a big swing in the direction of the Pats. But moving on here to Texans at Colts. All time, the Colts are 17-5 versus Houston in Indy. Texans love to air the ball out. I know. Interesting.
That shocks me.
I know.
Must
Didn't
just
you
be
say,
recent years.
you
Yeah,
said
because I said
you said on the last 2 episodes ago that the Houston does better, and I looked it up. 17-5 all time. The Colts are so they do.
I mean, like we do just own the Texans franchise as a whole.
That's mainly what it is, and it doesn't go that back that far because the Texans aren't
Yeah.
that long of a team. So back to what is it? 02, I think they became a team, but Texans, we know they're gonna love to air it out, and the Colts secondary was my biggest concern of their team going into the season. Young secondary, we do not know what we're going to get out of a lot of those guys. The Colts' offensive strength, I think, for them is going to be in the run game, and the Texans are a team you kind of need to pass against to win. I think the Colts are going to have success in the pass game this game, and I think they're also going to have a lot of success in the run game. I expect the Colts to be on the board early and often in this game. I think we saw early on, I believe Richardson got hurt in the Texans game last year, right?
Yes.
He was playing well early, and then he got hurt.
18 snaps, 17.5 fantasy points.
There you go. But yeah, he was great. So, I think that's going to continue again for the Colts. I think both of these teams are going to be very good. but I just trust the Texans as a team that just won a playoff game a little bit more. And I trust that the Texans are going to, their strength plays into the weakness of the Colts defense. So for that reason, I am going to go with the Texans -2.5. But if I had to take a selection of games where I'm very iffy on, this game is 100% in there with the Bills game and a couple others.
Yeah, and on top of that, Colts notoriously bad at their opening game of the season.
Yeah.
In our last 10 seasons, we are 0-9-1 in the first game of the season, which is
Wild.
just very bad.
Does that go back farther, or did they win the 11th one?
I think we might have won the 11th one,
okay.
which, man, electric. I miss it.
Yeah.
New big rivalry kind of in the AFC South. Hopefully it's one that'll continue to go on for a long time. One of the best games on this slate. We saw this game in week 18 for a playoff appearance. And at the time we didn't know, but it was for the AFC South championship. Colts had a good chance to win that game late, had an unfortunate drop. They had Gardner Minshew at quarterback for that because Anthony Richardson missed back half of the season. In the offseason, we saw the Texans make a lot of splash moves. Stephon Diggs, Danielle Hunter, Joe Mixon, and we saw the Colts kind of stay quiet, re-sign their guys, had a good draft. But I think both of these teams are pretty even. In that final game in Week 18, C.J. Stroud got the better of the Colts secondary. He looked very good. Colts have basically the same secondary. They get the addition of Dallas Flowers back from injury. That's about it. Nick Cross was named the starting safety to go alongside Julian Blackmon. And we talked about in the recap, the Texans bring in a new receiving core with Diggs. They brought in a running back with Joe Mixon. And I think that wide receiver core is going to give the Colts secondary a lot of troubles, and it's going to be hard for them to keep up. When the Colts had Anthony Richardson in that game, he played phenomenal. He only played in about 4 games. That was maybe his best half. He had, I think, 2 rushing touchdowns. Like I said, 18 plays, 17.4 fantasy points. He looked very good. Jonathan Taylor was not in that game. I'm excited to see him and Jonathan Taylor finally, hopefully, have a full season together. Both of these games were close last year. I think this game is going to be close, and with the spread only being 2.5, I really don't want to have to pick against my team. I think the Colts secondary is just kind of too much. I think the Colts secondary doesn't have enough to keep up with how great C.J. Stroud and this Texans receiving room is. I think the pass rush will give Stroud a couple issues, but I think the Texans are going to win a close one. Another game, I think that could be a 3-point win. I'll really reluctantly go with Texans -2.5.
Yeah, I mean, if this game is in Houston and the spread is 5.5, I'd probably take the Colts plus 5.5.
I take Colts money line in Houston,
but there's just 2.5 is too little for me.
Yeah.
When I think the Texans are going to win. But moving on here to Jaguars at Dolphins. The Dolphins pass rush is not the deepest, but the Jags O-line is such a weak unit. I think that's going to be a recipe for success for the Dolphins. The Dolphins might be the most electric offense in football, and the Jags defense, especially their secondary, is very, very thin. Dolphins at home in the hot months, as we know, have just been a force in recent years. It's really hard to beat them in September, October when you're playing them in Miami. Jags are going to have to set the tone in this run game early and often, and I just do not see that being a strength for them on the year, and I don't see that being a strength for them in this game in Miami. I think the Dolphins are very similar to the Jags in terms of their strengths and in terms of their weaknesses, except for I think the Dolphins are just better than the Jags in most aspects of the game right now. So I do believe the Jags are the better, I do believe that the Dolphins are the better team. I think 3.5 at home for the Dolphins is kind of insulting. I love this line betting on the Dolphins. I'm going to take the Fins -3.5.
Yeah, this is one of the easier ones for me. Since McDaniel took over Miami's coaching in 2022, Dolphins are 6-0 in the first 3 weeks of the season and outscore opponents by an average of 13 points in those wins. They have the fastest offense in the NFL with Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane, Jalen Wright. Just very fast team. I don't think this Jags defense, which I'm not high on at all, will be able to keep up with them. Even if they can get pressure on Tua, I think he's just going to get the ball out quick to his guys, and I think they're going to dominate. Kevin Harlan is going to be on this game with Trent Green and Melanie Collins. The game is on CBS. McDaniel has never lost with this trio announcing the game. He is 7-0 with an average of 38 points per game when Kevin Harlan and them announced. Wow. So I expect Kevin Harlan to be raving about this Dolphins offense a lot.
They had to a bit on that Broncos game.
Oh yeah.
There's no way that's not inflating the stats.
I remember vividly. I'm pretty sure that they were on that game.
Yeah, that
38 points per game is crazy.
the only I would bet if you took out that game, they dropped like 25 points per game.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
70.
rough. And to kind of talk, I've been talking back about the Jaguars here now, but to continue that, Doug Peterson has not decided as of September 2nd. Maybe he decided today, but as of September 2nd, he has not decided who will be calling plays, whether it'll be him or Press Taylor. Season starts in a couple days. I don't know how you haven't decided that yet. I think the Dolphins take care of business easily in this game, and I think Jacksonville's going to have a lot of question marks going into week 2.
All right, moving on here to a NFC South matchup. Panthers at Saints, two very unimpressive teams from the NFC South. Both teams are very bad in the trenches on both ends. I think and they both have solid pass defenses, so I think they're very similar teams overall. I think we see a improvement this year from Bryce Young and the pass offense of Carolina, but this pass defense of New Orleans is very solid. I don't know if we're going to see them have a ton of success against the Saints defense. Excuse me. I think the Saints passing offense is more reliable going into the year, but at the same time, it's really just Olave, Shaheed, and Kamara for them, which is a solid trio. But I just do not have trust in Derek Carr, and I think this O line is horrible for the Saints. And I think even though that the Panthers do not have a ton of great pieces on their D line, I think they're going to be able to get some pressure against Derek Carr. The Saints have won 7 of their last 9 games at home versus the Panthers, and I think I'm taking a ton of favorites this week. I'm just all over the favorites. And just statistically, that's just not how it goes. We're not going to see 15 favorites win this week. So for that reason, I am going to rock with the Panthers plus 3.5. I think the Saints win this game outright, but I think there's a chance the Panthers can really compete and keep this to a field goal game. So I'm going to rock with the Panthers plus 3.5. Like I said in the preview, I think these teams are very close overall. So I'm going to go with the Panthers on the spread, but the Saints outright.
Yeah, I think this game is going to be very close as well. I've talked on the preview. I think I put the Panthers finishing ahead of the Saints. Yeah, I think I put them finishing ahead of the Saints in my preview. Clint Kubiak is the new OC with the Saints. Dave Canales is having his debut game with the Panthers at head coach. The big thing for the Panthers was that they finally got Bryce Young some receivers, drafted Xavier Legette in the first round, brought in Deontay Johnson to go along with Adam Thielen. They have 3 new starters on the O-line to try to help that. But I just don't like this really run game with Chuba Hubbard early in the season. And I like this Saints defense. I'm not a fan of their offense with Derek Carr, but I really like this Saints, at least their secondary, maybe not their front 7, but there's Adebo, Marshawn Lattimore, drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry. They got Tyrann Mathieu. I think the secondary is going to give Bryce Young some trouble, especially in this game, first game of the season. I'm going to go with the Saints minus 3.5. I think that the Saints defense, like I said, is going to be very good. I think Bryce Young is going to struggle, but I don't think it's going to hurt him for too long in the season. Game is also in New Orleans. I think that's going to affect a little bit. So I just don't like this matchup for the Panthers week 1. I think if they play again later in the season, I might be going. I think I'll be going with the Panthers when the game is in Carolina, depending on how the season's going. But for this one, I have Saints minus 3.5.
Okay, moving on here to a game we talked about being one of the worst, if not the worst game this week. Our final noon 1 p.m. game, the Vikings and Giants, two teams that are just very unimpressive mysteries going into the year. A lot of question marks from both teams. The Vikings offensive line and the Giants defensive lines are the two strengths of these two teams. Whichever unit wins most likely wins this game. And hold on, I'm actually going to change my pick here live. So okay.
I've changed.
I think the Darnold and Vikings weapons perform better than the Giants weapons, and I'm not confident in Daniel Jones this year at all. I know, and we talked about it. We talked about this exact matchup last week with or 2 weeks ago when we were talking about the Daniel Jones beating the Vikings in the playoffs 2 years ago. They did match up. Jones was playing really, really well then. He's coming off of an injury. We don't know what we're going to see from him. He's always had moments in his career where he looked really good, and he's always had moments where he's looked horrible. We never know what Daniel Jones we're going to see. The Vikings pass defense is not impressive. I think that could definitely help Daniel Jones and this Giants offense. Both teams are just full of holes. I think the Vikings have higher highs, but when I look at the trenches, I think the Giants D line is going to be able to compete with the strength of the Vikings O line. And as bad as the Giants O line is, I do not think that the Vikings D line is very impressive. Two teams that I'm not impressed by in general. I'm going to take the home team Giants plus 1.5.
Yeah, this is a tough one to pick. This is a game that in the offseason we'd be saying we'd do anything for this game, but now that it's week one, it's almost like you just kind of want to skip it, but still excited for it. Dallas Turner, his first game is going to go up against Andrew Thomas. That'll be maybe a thing to watch. Malik Neighbors as well for the Giants in the debut. I have this game very close. I'm not a fan of either team overall. It'll be interesting to see if Sam Darnold, how he'll do with some of the best receivers he has had in his entire career. He is playing at a stadium he has played at before a lot when he was with the Jets at MetLife, but overall, I just think this Giants roster, both teams, like you said, have holes in them a lot. I like the Giants pass rush. Vikings have a good O line, but if the Giants pass rush can get home at all and put some pressure on Sam Darnold, I think that'll hurt. The Vikings do have a new run game with Aaron Jones. It'll be interesting to see how he does, but it's a very close game. Spread's only 1.5, and with the Giants being underdogs at 1.5, with the starting quarterback that they've been preparing for all off season, I'm going to go with the Giants plus 1.5 as well. But two teams that I'm not very keen on for the most of the season.
Okay, moving on here. We're starting off the 4/3 p.m. slate with the Raiders at Chargers here in the AFC West. Both defenses are big question marks entering the season, but both defenses also have great pieces. You have Max Crosby for the Raiders. You have guys like Khalil Mack, like Derwin James, like Joey Bosa for the Chargers. The Chargers passing offense, I think, is really going to be able to open up against a weak Vegas secondary. Although we have question marks about the Chargers' weapons, anybody with Justin Herbert against this Raiders defense should be able to get a lot of work in. Chargers pass rush should succeed more often than the Raiders pass rush does. They have a couple guys. The Raiders also have a couple guys. They got Wilkins and Crosby to go against the couple great defensive line guys in Bosa and Mack for the Chargers. But I think we see more success from the Chargers pass rush because we do have great tackles from the Chargers to go against Crosby for the Raiders. But it's hard for me to believe, despite the holes, that a Harbaugh defense is going to be outright horrible. I know the Chargers defense continues to be bad every year despite their players. And I continue to say I'm not going to get fooled, but I just cannot imagine they're going to get torn up by this Raiders offense week one with Jim Harbaugh at the helm. I think we see a high scoring game, though, from both teams regardless. The Chargers struggling to run the ball against this Raiders team could be an issue for them if they're forced to pass the ball the whole game. But like I said, they still do have Justin Herbert. The Raiders are going to have a lot more fans in this game than the Chargers, most likely in LA. I'm very back and forth on this one, too. But I was more back and forth yesterday when I was doing my research for this game than I am now. I'm going to confidently go with the Chargers -3.
Yeah, thinking of how this could still be a Raiders home game, I wonder if the crazy Chargers fan from last year is going to be back.
Oh,
That might have been the Raiders game that she was at that she had got. I can't remember, but
I don't know.
yeah. Two teams that are kind of flying under the radar a little bit. Raiders D line is very scary. They have a good trio with Malcolm Kuntz, Christian Wilkins, and especially Max Crosby. Tyree Wilson, he's struggled. It'll be interesting to see how much he plays in this game. I've been hearing not great things about him from his camp. New quarterback for the Raiders, Gardner Minshew, Pro Bowler last season with the Colts. In his first game with Vegas, he looked okay in preseason. He's going to have a great wide receiver duo, obviously, with Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers. A nice tight end duo with the debut of Brock Bowers from Georgia and Michael Mayer, who had a kind of underwhelming rookie season. But overall, this offense has a lot of firepower, but I don't know if I trust Gardner Minshew that much. I think Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa are going to be in the backfield a lot and throwing some things off for him, so he's going to have to get the ball out fast. But I agree. I think Jim Harbaugh, he's going to have this defense playing well. Maybe they have some holes in the secondary. If Asante Samuel can slow down Devontae Adams at all, that'll be huge for the Chargers. And offensively for the Chargers, they don't have the best running back duo with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, but I think they'll be able to get the job done. Chargers offensive line is better than it was last season. They invested some draft capital into Joe Alt with their first round pick. They have a solid tackle duo. Justin Herbert he needs to make a statement after his struggle last season, dealing with injuries. He doesn't have the best wide receivers to do it, but I think Lad McConkey is going to show out in this game and kind of show that he could be a very big receiver for the rest of the season and maybe the alpha in this room, beating out guys like Josh Palmer. I think this game's going to be close, but what was it? I think the spread was 3. I'm going to go with the Chargers -3. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think the Chargers get it done.
Okay, moving on here to Broncos at Seahawks. This is a very tough environment for a rookie quarterback to go into for Bo Nix here in Seattle. The Broncos defense, like we talked about, I think is just not going to be good this year at all. I'm worried about Seattle's O-line, but against this Broncos defense, I don't think that's a concern. And we know that Geno Smith has a ton of weapons at his disposal for the Seahawks. And those are the teams that the Broncos are going to really struggle against this year. Teams that have a true identity, teams that know what they want to do on offense. Those are the teams that the Broncos are going to struggle against this year. And going into Seattle and playing the Seahawks team, I think is going to be really tough for them. I think the Seahawks are going to be able to run the ball with ease, whether it's Walker, whether it's Charbonnet, however they want to do it. I think they're going to be able to run the ball with ease. This is a very tough secondary too, to face as a rookie quarterback. I'm not gonna say I'm starting to believe in Bo Nix, but I think he can be serviceable against bad teams. When you're playing a team that has a great secondary and you're going into one of the tougher environments in football as a rookie, I think that's really hard when you're in a team that doesn't have a lot of talent. Despite having a veteran head coach in Sean Payton who knows how to win these games, I still think it's going to be tough for Nix and this Broncos team. I'm going to take the Seahawks -5.5 pretty confidently. I think the Seahawks could blow them out in this game.
Yeah, I agree. It's a new era in Seattle with Mike McDonald. Geno Smith is back as the quarterback. He was okay last season, 20 touchdowns, 9 picks, missed a little bit of time with injury. I think he'll be able to produce. Kenneth Walker, obviously, he's back as well with Charbonnet as his backup. Kenneth Walker's been getting a lot of praise from the coaching staff, saying he's looked very good coming into this season. And then they obviously have the big wide receiver trio with Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and JSN. I don't think the Broncos secondary will be able to keep up with those 3. I think Pat Surtain, he can maybe lock down one of them, but then the other 2, I think, are going to have big games. And then with Kenneth Walker out of the backfield in the run game, I think the Seahawks are going to score a lot of points in this game. Bo Nix, I don't think he'll be able to keep up. He had a very good preseason. He's got Cortland Sutton, but outside of Sutton, the wide receiver and tight end group there is not very good. Josh Reynolds and Marvin Mims. The other 2, I think the Seahawks are able to shut him down. And it's really a rough environment for Bo Nix to have to play his first game in. Javonte Williams hopefully can have a better season this season as the RB1 in Denver, but I think this is one of the easier ones for me as well. I think the Seahawks -5.5 is an easy play. I think they're going to score a lot, and I think they're going to be able to shut down this Broncos offense.
Okay, moving along here with Cowboys at Browns. 2 insanely talented teams on paper. It's going to be tough in this game for the Cowboys to run the ball. It was tough for them the entirety of last season to run the ball, and the Browns have just an amazing defense front to back. They're really good at stopping the run. I think they're going to continue to do that. This is a depleted Cowboys O-line here. I don't think it's going to be the biggest issue for them this year, but it is a depleted O-line, and when you're playing against Darius Smith and Myles Garrett, it is really, really tough to have a depleted O-line. When Dak is under pressure, he just isn't himself. If they can get to Dak early and often and limit this Cowboys pass game at all, it's going to be a long, long night for Dallas. They need to be able to pass the ball, and it's really tough in this scenario for them. Despite quarterback issues for the Browns, I think they have a solid matchup against this defense. The Cowboys were just a different team on the road all year last year. Deshaun has struggled in Cleveland, but similar to Kirk Cousins, like we said, his situation is very, very good. I think they're going to be in a good spot to succeed here. And as much as I think the Cowboys money line is going to be the popular pick here this week with them going against Deshaun Watson, I'm going to rock with the Browns money line. I think the Browns are a more complete, better team overall. And week 1, I'm taking the teams that have less holes in them, especially when they're at home. So give me the Browns -2.5.
I think this is Fox's game of the week. This will be Tom Brady's first regular season game as an announcer, so I'm excited to see how that goes.
Cannot wait for that. That's going to be great.
It's going to be exciting. When I was doing my research, I saw the last time these 2 teams played. It was in 2020, and I don't know if you remember this game, but it was an absolutely electric one. I think the final score was like 49-36 or something very high. Cowboys had Amari Cooper, who went off on the Cleveland Browns defense. CeeDee Lamb also played. He had 2 touchdowns. Dak had 500 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. But the Browns won the game. Odell Beckham had a huge game and maybe his only phenomenal game he had with Cleveland.
He had a
But
few.
now
He had a few good games.
he had a few games, but this was the best one, I'm pretty sure. And this game, I think, couldn't be almost more opposite than that game. I think this is going to be a defensive battle between these two very good defenses. This game's in Cleveland. We saw how good Dallas was at home last season. I'm very excited for this game. It's going to be one of the best ones. Cowboys do have a new defensive coordinator, so maybe it'll be a slower start for them. But overall, I trust Dak Prescott. He was very good last season. He cut down the turnovers, especially the interceptions, where Deshaun Watson, every time I watched him play last season, I was just underwhelmed, did not look good. It's early in the season. I kind of have these two rosters kind of similar. I think they both have elite defenses. Cowboys able to get Trayvon Diggs back in the secondary, which helps them. They did lose Gilmore. But overall, I just trust Dak way more than I trust Deshaun Watson, and I'm going to go with the better quarterback play. I'm taking the Cowboys to win outright. I think it's going to be low scoring, close game, but I just trust Dallas to get the job done. Maybe they still don't have a run game, but CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, maybe revenge game, but excited for this one. I think it's Cowboys
2.5.
What was it? 2.5, yeah. I got Cowboys plus
And they
2.5.
always have in their back pocket, if they do blow it at the end and the Browns go for 2 to win the game and get it, they always have a couple redos in their back pocket. So
Yeah,
they have,
okay.
they have
Well,
that insurance.
They might want to save them for later in the season, though.
I don't know. I think
maybe
they
like
might
week
have
16.
They might have unlimited. I don't know. But
I don't know.
I wish there was a prop for the announcers because I'm convinced that it's him and Burkhardt, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm convinced that he's gonna start the broadcast like this. He's gonna go, "I'm Kevin Burkhardt with the greatest of all time, Tom Brady." I guarantee you. I guarantee you he says that. I'm so confident in that, and I'm definitely clipping this if that happens, and I'm gonna completely ignore it if it doesn't. But I'm convinced that's what he's gonna say.
Yes, it is Kevin Burkhardt and Tom Brady. I wanted to see
Greg
the
Olson
Fox.
got shafted.
Yes, and I think he was upset about it too, but
Cool.
I wanted to see who he's with now.
It's probably not Adam Amin. Who could it be?
I looked up Tom Brady though. I looked up Fox announcers. It says Tom Brady kept notes from every NFL game he played, and he will use them in broadcasts.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Very
like
useful.
a record amount of games, and he's gonna just be scrolling through and looking at like 2005 games.
He's like, shit, I had something to say about 05 week 7. Fuck. Scrolling to the bottom.
Oh, here, Fox NFL announcing teams. Greg
Greg
Olson is with Joe Davis. That makes sense.
Oh, yeah. That does make sense.
Adam Amin, Mark Sanchez.
Yeah, those two are.
Kenny Albert and Jonathan Vilma. That's, man, Kevin Cougar and Daryl Johnson, Chris Myers, and Mark Schlerth.
No Aqib Talib?
No, that must be
in the seasons where no one else wants to announce.
Yeah. And if they ever get a bye week, Aqib Talib and Gus Johnson will come in and just have an absolute electric game.
That's a duo. There was a time where the Lions got them every week. It was when they were bad. But moving on.
Can't wait to hear those voices though.
Yeah, I'm excited too, Tom. It's gonna be great to hear, Tom. But moving on here to our final 4:00 game, Commanders at Buccaneers. The run defense for the Bucs is very good. I think it's going to force rookie quarterback Daniels to have to throw the ball a ton in his first start, which you never want from your rookie. You want to be able to lean on the run in his first couple starts. The Commanders' defense isn't horrible, but their secondary is very, very bad. And I think that that is just a weakness when you're playing against a team like the Bucs, who just couldn't run the ball last year, but they were a phenomenal passing team. They're going to get to play in their strengths right off the bat against this bad secondary, and I think they're going to have a ton of success. I don't know if the Bucs are going to be able to run the ball this game or this year as a whole. I said in the preview, I think if they're able to run the ball, I think they're definitely in contention to win this division over the Falcons. If they're not, I think it'll be the Falcons. I think that also goes by a game basis. I think any game where they're able to run the ball is going to be a game where they have a good chance to win. If they're not able to, they better hope they're going against a team that has a Swiss cheese secondary, and I think that's what the Commanders have here. The Bucs should be able to just completely air it out for this game. Luckily for Jaden Daniels, the Bucs pass rush is not fantastic, so he's going to, with an improved Commanders O-line, he's going to be able to have a lot of time in the pocket as long as he doesn't make any terrible decisions. He's going to have the time to make throws. I think Daniels actually is going to have a pretty solid debut against this Bucs offense, against the Bucs defense, but I think the Bucs offense is going to be too much for the Commanders. Give me the Bucks minus 3.5 in a game that I think is too low of a spread.
Yeah, Commanders, Jaden Daniels rookie debut here. He's going against a solid defense. Commanders O-line, while it is better, it's still not good. I think the Bucks are going to have to try and take advantage of that if they can. We saw later in the season, Kalijah Kancey got better. Hopefully he can have a big game for him here. Commanders' new coach, Dan Quinn, should have this defense playing better than it did last season. I think it was the worst defense in the NFL last season. Jaden Daniels is going to have a big game if they want to win. He's got to stay healthy. He has to be a little more careful. But I think Todd Bowles, he's a great defensive coordinator, great defensive coach. I think he's going to be able to slow down Jaden Daniels a little bit, just enough. The new OC for the Buccaneers, Liam Cohen from Kentucky. It'll be interesting to see how he comes out and coaches his team. You talked about their rushing offense. I agree. I think this is a game where their run game could show that it has improved. They invested in the O-line with Graham Barton. I think maybe Rachaad White has a solid game on the ground. I'm going to go with the Buccaneers minus 3.5 as well. Really, I'm looking at these first week 1 games, and I'm looking at who has a better roster and who has a better quarterback. I think overall the Buccaneers win in both of those. So I'm going to go Bucks minus 3.5.
Okay, moving on to Sunday Night Football. Rams at the reigning, defending NFC North champion Detroit Lions. It is a rematch of the Sunday night wildcard game last year in the playoffs. The Rams O-line is a little banged up, but it looks like Jonah Jackson and Avila are both going to be good to go. They might swap spots with center and guard. They don't know. They've been pretty mysterious about that early on in camp. The Rams defense, especially up front, is really going to struggle against this great Lions offense. I do not think they're going to do a great job of stopping the run this year without Aaron Donald. I think they're really going to struggle in that department, and we know the Lions are just phenomenal at running the ball. Jahmyr Gibbs reported today he's 98% good, and he is going to play in week 1. So that's great news for the Lions. They also have David Montgomery, of course. The Rams passing offense is very good, and the Lions secondary is young but talented. That's really going to be the difference. If the Lions are going, if the Rams are able to pass over this Lions secondary and the Lions secondary just isn't ready, like I said, with teams like the Ravens, with teams like, I can't remember who the other team I said had a young secondary. But that's actually going to kill me. I have to scroll up. It was the Eagles. The Eagles and the Lions and the Ravens are all teams that have young secondaries who I think can be really good, but week 1 you never know, and we know this Rams passing offense is great. I think that's just truly going to be the difference of this game. The Rams are going to probably struggle to run the ball against this Lions run defense. They were phenomenal last year. They're only better. This Lions run defense is going to force the Rams to test this secondary. It's truly going to come down to what happens in that matchup. The Lions' home field advantage should be insane for them again. It was insane for this game last year. I think it's going to be. Once again, the Lions should be able to set the tone in this game with the run game and carry that throughout. If the Lions secondary is Swiss cheese, I absolutely could see them losing this game. If Stafford's able to pass for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, I definitely could see that. But if they can at least compete with this Rams passing offense, as their secondary, who was much worse last year, competed with the Rams passing offense in the playoffs, the Lions are going to be in a good spot to win this game. I think this is very similar to that Packers Eagles game. 2 teams that I think are going to score a ton of points. One team that I think is going to benefit a lot more from passing. One team I think is going to benefit a lot more from running the ball. The only difference is I think the Lions are just going to be able to torch this Rams defense early. I think they're going to be able to set the tone, control time of possession. I think the Lions win this game. Line is at 3.5. I'm taking it at 3.5. Maybe I'll extend it more like I did against the Chiefs last year, but give me the Lions minus 3.5.
These are 2 very good teams. Obviously, 2 teams that I expect to make the playoffs. Matt Stafford gets a chance for a revenge game for 2 different reasons, I guess. And more importantly for this one, though, the Stafford family will not be there, so he will not have to worry about his children getting booed at this game.
They booed his wife.
They
booed his wife.
No, according to the wife, they booed the children. So
yeah, I know.
According
to her, a lot of shit's happened.
Yeah, those disgusting Lions fans cannot boo the children. Oh no, yes, I've seen that.
That was wild. Ugh, everything she says just ends up turning out bad for them.
Yeah.
Good thing she's not there for them, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's more important for the kids because they were booing the kids. So
yeah, for sure, totally.
They were booing the kids. This is This is kind of the one game that I'm picking against the team that I feel like has the better overall roster and quarterback. There were 8 games last year where the Rams had Stafford, Cup, Nakua, and Kyron Williams on the field at the same time. They went 6-2. I'm pretty sure one of the losses was the Lions in the playoffs. Stafford threw 18 touchdowns compared to just 3 interceptions. And the Lions home game Sunday Night Football. They were very good in primetime last season. Had one of the best off seasons in the entire NFL. They will still be hungry. It'll be a banner game where they're raising their NFC North Championship and their NFC finalist banner. I'd love to see one of them ripped out.
Yeah. I'd rather them hang like a great season banner or something like that. Great season 2022 or 2023.
They might even take a stoop lower than the Colts and just go NFC playoff game victory.
Yeah, I don't know.
They might do that. You never know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
divisional round champion. That would be hilarious.
I can't even. I forgot there's not even a wild card round anymore. I guess is it still
There
called
is.
the wild card? It's called the wild card, but it's not the same though.
It's where we beat the Rams.
It's not the same. It's only one bye. Wild card round champions. But
I would hate if they hung a banner like that. But if there's a team that fucking deserves it, they deserve to hang a banner for that shit. They do.
And then in 10 years, they can go and send it to Pardon My Take.
Exactly. We'll have won a Super Bowl by then. Hopefully.
Okay. Yeah. I think there's a chance that I don't think the Lions are a team that I expect to overlook teams, but I think this is a game where the Rams are going to come out just a little more hungry for losing in the playoffs. I think Stafford's going to be very hungry, and I still think the Lions can win this game, but with the line at 3.5, I'm going to lean towards Rams plus 3.5. I think that's actually a pretty good bet.
3.5 versus 3 is big.
Yeah. I think this is going to be. I think a loss even here though could be good for the Lions. I think they'll dominate in the coming weeks.
Moral victory week 1.
I wouldn't say it's a moral victory. I'd say it makes them pissed off and they just go into the next couple of weeks and absolutely dominate and don't even let the game stay close. But I'm gonna go with the Rams plus 3.5 here. Matt Stafford, like I said, they're not gonna be booing his kids, and he's gonna be pissed that they did boo his kids. So
okay, moving on here. Last game of the week 1 preview, Monday Night Football. Jets at 49ers. This is the true, hopefully knock on wood, Rodgers debut for the Jets. 2 of the best rosters in football. I guess we'll take the chance now to talk about the Niners. We mentioned Pearsall, of course, got shot in San Francisco, or was it in I don't know if it was in San Francisco.
I think it was in San Francisco, yes.
He was in bad condition at first, and then they said he was in fair condition. So good for him that he is okay. He's on the PUP list right now, I believe, though. He's going to miss at least the first 4 weeks of the season. A couple days ago, Ayuk signed an extension with the 49ers after all this time. He ends up just like the Debo situation. We kind of called it. Ends up back in San Fran. Also today, Trent Williams signs his extension, so he is back in now. So now they're nearing full strength. It looks like Christian McCaffrey is banged up, but he's okay. He's going to play. So the Niners have most of their best players back. The Jets defense, I think, is going to give a 49ers offense some trouble in this game. The Jets defense is just so good. Any team they play is going to be in trouble, and that includes the 49ers. The Rodgers and the Jets offense should be able to pass the ball super well. If they can establish a run game, they're going to be in a great spot this game. We saw the Niners were susceptible to giving up a ton of rushing yards at points last year. If Breece Hall and this Jets O-line can force that to happen in this game, I think the Niners could be in a load of trouble. Jets on paper, I think, match up better than the 49ers here. Truthfully, I think the Jets may be the better team. I think there's a good chance the Niners win this game outright. But this game should not be a 4.5 point spread, in my opinion. I think for that reason, I am going to take the Jets plus 4.5. Before we decided to do the betting odds, I did have the Niners winning this game outright. But 4.5 points for a team that I am confident in the Jets is going to be a top 5 team in this league. I'm going to take the Jets plus 4.5 at San Francisco Monday night, week 1. Hopefully Rodgers doesn't get hurt and screw that over. But they did win last time, so.
Dangerous putting Aaron Rodgers back. I mean, wild to put him on primetime Monday Night Football in game 1 again. Yep. He lasted 5 snaps last season before he tore his Achilles. They are in San Francisco this time, not MetLife, thank goodness. But the guy who did tear his Achilles is going to be lining up against him, Leonard Floyd. He will maybe go out there on that fifth play and have a chance to do something in back-to-back seasons on the same week, on the same day, at the same time, which is just absolutely wild. It might take Rodgers a little bit of time to get into the game after missing so much time. About 2 years, if you only playing 5 snaps in 2 years is rough. But the Jets defense is very good. It was phenomenal last season. Second fewest passing yards, third fewest total yards in the league. And Robert Saleh was the former defensive coordinator for the 49ers for about 4 years or 3 years, 2017 to 2020. And the 49ers in the offseason had a lot of drama. We saw the IU contract issues, the Trent Williams contract issues. They had a lot going on. But in the past week, John Lynch and just the organization have kind of put on a masterclass. Ricky Pearsall really unfortunately got shot, but somehow miraculously is like perfectly fine. Got shot through the chest, but I guess he's already back in the locker room training and doing everything. And Trent Williams said today that because of that, it made him want to come back and play more than anything because he's never experienced something like that in his playing career. So Trent Williams is back. He'll be ready to go week 1. It might take him a time not being in camp at all to warm up a little bit. They have Ayuk ready. They just, I think, restructured Debo's contract to get a lot more cap space as well. So what a week overall for him. I had that as a negative for how much offseason drama they had going into week 1, but they've seemed to get it all figured out going into week 1. But with that being said, when I first did this, I had the Jets winning outright. Aaron Rodgers on Monday Night Football has won 10 straight games. He's one shy of tying the record, and he's playing against the 49ers, who he's always had beef with in his career, and he struggled against, but he does not like them. I've kind of reversed to think the 49ers win this game, but like you said, 4.5 is a big spread, so I am going to go with the Jets plus 4.5. But what a week for the 49ers overall, just to get back into a position where you have really no drama going on, except for what happened with Pearsall.
I almost think that the Niners are going to cover 4.5 now, just because
I'm looking at all these spreads and I'm like, how is this one 4.5? But the Bucks at home are 3.5.
Yeah.
And who else was it that the Dolphins at home against the Jags are 3.5. Like, I don't understand how the Falcons at home against the Steelers team, who we don't think is going to be insane good in the beginning of the season, 3.5. How those spreads are bigger than Jets 49ers, I don't understand. But I'm still going to take
a trap.
Yeah. So I truly don't know.
I saw going way back to the Texans Colts. I think the Texans minus 2.5 was like the biggest bet of the week. So we both put minus 2.5.
Yeah.
Maybe we're just following the trend, and hopefully the odds makers are playing us.
Yeah.
We still have our best bets.
You're right. You're right. I don't even know what I'm going to pick here for mine. You want to go first? Because I do not have mine.
Are we counting the over-unders, or are we just doing spreads? I think we should do both for just our best bets.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any off the top of my head, but yeah, go ahead. You can start. I'll figure it out while you start.
You said one. I'm not going to use that one earlier, but for my first bet,
I'm going to use that one.
Do you want to go back and forth, or
we can go back
three at once?
We can go back and forth.
Okay, good. For my first one, I'm going to go Bears minus 4.5. I know the rookie quarterbacks aren't very good in their debut games week 1, but he's in a perfect position. I don't like this Titans team at all, and I think the Bears are easy to cover minus 4.5. The Titans won't be able to run. I think the Bears will slow down the pass, and I think the Bears can score. So I got Bears minus 4.5 as my first one.
My first one, you hinted at it. I'm going with the over in the Packers-Eagles game, over 48.5. Like I said, I think the Packers are going to be able to pass all over the Eagles.
I think the Eagles are going to be able to run all over the Packers. This is one of the higher over-unders this week. I believe it's the third highest. The highest is the Lions. It's like third or fourth highest. But regardless, I'm still going to take it. I think we see an offensive game back and forth between these teams. I think both defenses' biggest weakness is the other team's biggest strength. I think that leads to the overhit in this one.
For my second bet, I'm going to go with Dolphins minus 3.5. I had talked about how good they are at the start of the season. They're very good there. They have their best announcing duo, and I just don't trust this Jaguars team. And with Kevin Harlan on the call, I think the Dolphins are going to put up big numbers. I don't think I see the Jags putting up big numbers at all, so I got Dolphins minus 3.5 as my second best bet.
All right, as my second best bet, I'm going to go with the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs at minus 3 in the opening game against the Ravens. I just think the Chiefs are set up for success in this game. I think they just have less holes than the Ravens going into this game. The biggest problem for the Chiefs last year, and especially in week one, well, they didn't have Chris Jones, but especially in week one, was their receivers just not being able to catch any balls. It was a big problem for them in the regular season last year. I think that's definitely going to be shored up this year. I think Rashee Rice has a huge year for them. I think Travis Kelce has a bounce back year for them. I think we see guys like Xavier Worthy, and I know Hollywood Brown isn't playing early, but I think those guys have big years for them. I think the Chiefs are in a good spot to win this game at home. I think they want to avenge losing their opener last year at home. Give me -3 for the Chiefs.
Man, I really want to go with the Jets 4.5, but yeah, after you said it could be a trap. You know what? I'm gonna go with the biggest spread of the week at 9.5 in the Bengals. I'm gonna go Cincinnati -9.5. I don't like this Patriots team at all. I think that Joe Burrow is going to have a big game. I think the Bengals are going to want to make a statement. If Jamar Chase plays, I can easily see this hitting. If not, I think it'll be a little bit closer, but I'll go with Bengals -9.5.
All right. And for my final best bet of the week, I'm going to go with the Buccaneers -3.5 against the Commanders for every reason that I said before. The Bucs are just going to be able to air it out this game against a horrible secondary for the Commanders. I think that although Jaden Daniels is going to have a good game, I think the Bucs offense is going to be too much. I think there's a chance they're able to run the ball in this game, and that's always going to be a good situation for them. And with a rookie quarterback, he's inevitably going to make some mistakes, and I think the Bucs are a veteran team and they'll be able to capitalize on that. So my final best bet will be the Buccaneers of -3.5. You already did your 3, right? Or do you have one more?
Yes, I did that one.
So now that will be it for this preview episode of week 1 for the Engage A podcast. We will be back next week. I don't know exactly what day we're recording and whatnot, but we will be back next week to recap the week 1 results for the NFL, talk about all these games, where we were right, where we were wrong, and all that good stuff. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel here on YouTube, or rate us and follow us on Spotify if that's where you are listening. All those links in the description for YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, and all that good stuff will be in the description, and we will see everybody in the next one.